You're live. Thank you so much, Jamie. Sorry for the interruption, folks.
Where should I go from? Okay. Von Kempelen had never been even tolerably well off during his residence at Bremen, and often, it was well known, he had been put to extreme shifts in order to raise trifling sums. When the great excitement occurred about the forgery on the house of Gutsmith & Co., suspicion was directed towards Von Kempelen, on account of his having purchased a considerable property in Gasperitch Lane, and his refusing, when questioned, to explain how he became possessed of the purchase money. He was at length arrested, but nothing decisive appearing against him was in the end set at liberty. The police, however, kept a strict watch upon his movements, and thus discovered that he left home frequently, taking always the same road, and invariably giving his watchers a slip in the neighbourhood of that labyrinth of narrow and crooked passages known by the flash name of the Dondergat. Finally, by dint of great perseverance, they traced him to a garret in an old house of 7 stories in an alley called Flatplatz, and, coming upon him suddenly, found him, as they imagined, in the midst of his counterfeiting operations. His agitation is represented as so excessive, the officers had not the slightest doubt of his guilt. After handcuffing him, they searched his room, or rather rooms, for he appears he occupied all the mansard. Opening the garret where they caught him was a closet, 10 feet by 8 feet, fitted up with some chemical apparatus, of which the object has not yet been ascertained. In one corner of the closet was a very small furnace with a glowing fire in it, and on the fire a kind of duplicate crucible, 2 crucibles connected by a tube. One of these crucibles was nearly full of lead in a state of fusion, but not reaching up to the aperture of the tube, which was close to the brim. The other crucible had some liquid in it, which, as the officers entered, seemed to be furiously dissipating in vapour. They relate that, on finding himself taken, Kempelen seized the crucibles with both hands, which were encased in gloves that afterwards turned out to be asbestic, and threw the contents on the tiled floor. It was now that they handcuffed him, and before proceeding to ransack the premises, they searched his person. But nothing unusual was found about him, excepting a paper parcel in his coat pocket, containing what was afterward ascertained to be a mixture of antimony and some unknown substance, in nearly but not quite equal proportions. All attempts at analysing the unknown substance have, so far, failed. That it will ultimately be analysed is not to be doubted. Passing out of the closet with their prisoner, the officers went through a sort of antechamber, in which nothing material was found to the chemist's sleeping room. They here rummaged some drawers and boxes, but discovered only a few papers, of no importance, and some good coin, silver and gold. At length, looking under the bed, they saw a large common hair trunk without hinges, hasp, or lock, but with the top lying carelessly across the bottom portion. Upon attempting to draw this trunk out from under the bed, they found that, with their united strength, there were 3 of the all-powerful men, they could not stir it 1 inch. Much astonished at this, one of them crawled under the bed and, looking into the trunk, said, "No wonder we couldn't move it. Why, it's full to the brim with old bits of brass." Putting his feet now against the wall so as to get a good purchase, and pushing with all his force while his companions pulled with all theirs, the trunk, with much difficulty, was slid out from under the bed, and its contents examined. The supposed brass with which it was filled was all in small, smooth pieces, varying from the size of a pea to that of $1. The pieces were irregular in shape, although more or less flat-looking upon the whole, very much as lead looks when thrown upon the ground in a molten state, and there suffered to grow cool. Now, not one of these officers for a moment suspected this metal to be anything but brass. The idea of being gold never entered their brains, of course. How could such a wild fantasy have entered it? And their astonishment may well be conceived, when the next day it became known all over Bremen that the lot of brass, which they had come so contemptuously to the police office, without putting themselves to the trouble of pocketing the smallest scrap, was not only gold, real gold, but gold far finer than any employed in coinage. Gold, in fact, absolutely pure virgin, without the slightest appreciable alloy. I need not go over the details of Von Kempelen's confession, as far as it went, and release, but these are familiar to the public. But he has actually realized in spirit and fact, if not to the letter, the old chimera of the philosopher's stone. No sane person is at liberty to doubt. The opinions of Arago are, of course, entitled to the greatest consideration, but he is by no means infallible, and what he says of bismuth in his report to the Academy must be taken cum grano salis. The simplest truth is that up to this period, all analysis has failed, and until von Kempelen chooses to let us have the key to his own published enigma, it is more than probable the matter will remain for years in statu quo. All that as yet can fairly be said to be known is that pure gold can be made at will, and readily from lead in connection with certain other substances in kind and in proportions unknown. Speculation, of course, is busy as to the immediate and ultimate results of this discovery, a discovery in which few thinking persons will hesitate in referring to an increased interest in the matter of gold generally by the late developments in California. And this reflection brings us inevitably to another, the exceeding inopportuneness of von Kempelen's analysis. If many were prevented from adventuring to California by the mere apprehension that gold would so materially diminish in value on account of its plentifulness in the mines there, as to render the speculation of going so far in search of a doubtful one, what impression will be wrought now upon the minds of those about to emigrate, and especially upon the minds of those actually in the mineral region, by the announcement of this astonishing discovery of von Kempelen, a discovery which declares in so many words that beyond its intrinsic value, worth for manufacturing purposes, whatever that worth may be, gold now is, or at least soon will be, for it cannot be supposed that von Kempelen can long retain his secret, of no greater value than lead, and of far inferior value to silver. It is indeed exceedingly difficult to speculate prospectively upon the consequences of the discovery. But one thing may be positively maintained, that the announcement of the discovery 6 months ago would have had material influence in regard to the settlement of California. In Europe, as yet, the most notable results have been a rise of 200% in the price of lead, and nearly 25% that of silver. I have one more for you. The Raven. Once upon midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary, o'er many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door, only this, and nothing more. Distinctly I remember 'twas in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I had wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here, evermore. The silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger. Hesitating then no longer, "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I was scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and let this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a busted palace just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be short and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marvel this ungainly fowl here discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above the chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further then he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me as I hoped, my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Started at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken. Doubtless, said I, what it utters is only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of nevermore. But the raven, still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I took myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining with the lamplight gloated o'er. But whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, sung by seraphim, whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee by the angels he hath sent thee respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff this kind nepenthe and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether 10% or whether tempest toss thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore. Is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above, by that God we both adore. Tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aiden it'll clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word or sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of the lie thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take the beak from out thy heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting still is sitting upon the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of the demons that is dreaming. The lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul, from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore. Thank you very much. Until I get relieved. This is the Telltale Heart. True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been at Anne, but why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I had all things in the heaven and in the earth. I had many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how helpfully, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. Before I do that, hello.
No, we need bang for luck. Get Ollie in that free. Jamie, thank you very, very much. You have been a splendiferous final reader for our readathon.
Thanks for bringing it home, Jamie. Thank you very much.
Could not have done it without you. We were all puddles.
Yes, we're still
Yeah,
here.
it's still live.
Still live.
We're still live.
So, Helen would like to come and say a few words, Jamie. That'd be
Sorry.
great.
That's
No, you're
awesome.
all right.
Not at
You're
all.
absolutely fine.
I
Thank
do
you very
not
much.
apologise.
Hi there, I'm here on behalf of Poetic Justice Productions to say a big thank you to all our readers who've helped us out with this event and for everybody who took part. Anybody wants to donate, it's still not too late. We have the scan there if you want to use it. I am stepping down as the Director of Poetic Justice after this event, but I still intend to be here next year, so I will see you then.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, everybody. Bye.
And we're out, everybody.